Hi there, Mimick here with squashfitnesstips.com and welcome to episode 6 of Mistake Monday. Now this is where we look at an exercise or a movement or a workout and try and identify some common mistakes that squash players make which stop them from actually getting the most out of the exercise or may actually cause them injury. So for this week we're going to be focusing on the dynamic warm-up. And it's not necessarily mistakes that people make with an exercise, it's just doing wrong exercises. So anything to do with the legs, warming up the legs, we want dynamic movement, dynamic stretching. That's moving your limbs rather than holding a static stretch. Now a lot of squash players use the leg raise, whether it's a leg raise like this for the adductor, whether it's a leg raise like this for the hamstring, or even a leg raise up to the back for the hip flexor and quad. Now these are okay exercises if you're a taekwondo player or a karate player and you're going to be doing lots of high kicks and doing that motion in your practice. How many times on a squash court have you gone and side kicked someone? I would guess probably 0. So what can we do instead to try and mimic the movements that we're going to be doing on a squash court in a match or in practice? Well, instead of this one, for the adductor muscle, we can still do a dynamic stretch with our legs about double shoulder width apart and moving from side to side, like so. Now you could hold the static stretch like this, but for the warm-up we want dynamic movement, like so. 12 on each side will do it. Some main points about this one: when you come across the bent leg, the knee needs to track over your toes. You don't want your knee coming in like this. You're going to be tracking over the toes, and then you're going to be feeling the stretch here. To track over the toes like that, you need to hinge at the hip. As you come down like this, you're hinging at the hip. This is a basic hinge hip. So the legs are slightly bent, you're hinging at the hip, like a door hinge. Back like this. Same with the adductor stretch, coming down like this. The weight of your movement is held in the hamstrings, glutes, lower back, here like this. So that's for the adductor stretch instead of a leg raise like this. What about the hamstring? Just raising your leg up like that for the back of your leg. You might see this with squash players, pros. I saw a lot in Hong Kong when they would be warming up on the spare squash courts before their match. Simply put, just something like this. You can go down as far as you need to, but you definitely don't want this sort of thing. Same as the adductor one, we're hinging at the hip. So here we're hinging at the hip, hinging at the hip. We want to keep that extension in the lumbar spine, and then you're going to feel the stretch pretty much straight away in the hamstring. So from here, knees are together, this leg's bending, this one's coming straight down, we're flexing the toes back, and in that extension of the lumbar spine and the hinge of the hip, you're going to feel the stretch already there. You go down as far as you need to, but keep that hinging motion. Last one for the hip flexor or quad muscle, rather than something like this. What we can do instead, we get a rail or the side of the wall. Now I'm going to do it this side. From here, the static stretch would be something like this. You might see people doing this, or even grabbing their foot, bringing up like this, or even a stretch like this. This is the lunge position, one of the most common, if not the most common movement on the squash court. So from here, to make it dynamic, we can just do this motion. Now from a past episode we were talking about lunging, we want to keep the weight over our hips. So we're coming down here, weight over our hips. We're not coming forward with bending the leg and putting more weight on the front foot. We're keeping it over both legs. If you want it more, extend the back leg back, like so. And as I said, 12 for each stretch for each leg. So that about wraps it up. Try and incorporate that into your dynamic warm-up. So of course you want to be doing other things like, do a bit of running around the court, light jogging, even walking to get the blood pumping before you do these movements. Then once you do them, you're going to be ready to go. Then you can either do some ghosting, some one-step ghosting, and make it a little bit more active, but definitely move away from these leg raise style dynamic stretches. Now one thing I didn't mention with any of those leg raises, whether it's this way, that way, or back this way, Where people get caught up is the tightness in their hips. All the other ones I've showed you, so this one here for the hamstring, the adductor, and then the hip flexor and quad, all of these are utilizing your hip position and the weight of your body to encourage the right kind of hip position and weight distribution. These ones here, if your hips are already locked up, as you're doing this, you're just going to be swinging a locked up hip, or even this way, swinging a locked up hip, and you're not going to feel the stretch as much. So again, go back to these ones that encourage the right hip position and the weight distribution, and which mimic what you're going to be doing on a squash court. So that's it for episode 6 of Mistake Monday. I'm Schmidt Mick here with squashfitnesstips.com. Have fun and play your own game.